Welcome to episode 55 of Mindful Drawing here at Rooks is Fun. Today's technique is something foundational to the way we can design and make drawings, the way the world helps to structure and organize things around us. And we will explore subdivision as a kind of algorithmic but flexible pattern that we can deploy to begin to bring density and shape to a page, but also as something to reflect on how drawing these arbitrary boundaries and following these old patterns might lead us to places of constriction, of frustration, even of conflict around the edges of things, and perhaps to take a little time to wander through that space and see how we might open it up, soften the territory, use what is provided, and begin to define new things from it. All we need to get started are a couple of pieces of paper and a pen or pencil. We'll do a short warm-up on a scrap piece of paper or a free page in a sketchbook or even the back of an envelope or a napkin. And then we'll move into a bit longer exercise for about 20 minutes where we'll just wander through this territory of the page. So go ahead and grab your tools and let's draw together. Took me some time in the morning to figure out the place to start, and then usually that just means start with something simple and see where it goes. So I thought I would use the technique of subdivision, a kind of drawing technique that's also used throughout history to structure, lattice, and make things, as well as divide and organize things. Begin there as a place for providing the page some structure and then seeing where it might lead as a platform for loosening it up a little bit and undoing some of the sequestering of a subdivision. But the basic aspects we'll explore in the warm-up are on any small piece of paper, scrap, or sketchbook or something, in any direction that feels comfortable or good, just to draw a line that crosses the page. It could be horizontal or vertical, at an angle, straight or wobbly, however you see fit. And then somewhere along that line's distance, you select a point and draw out in one direction from it. Again, perpendicular or at an angle, just dividing the two regions now into three. And somewhere, again, along that line, towards the end, towards the middle, you select another place and draw in the other direction towards the other side. And this is kind of an algorithmic situation where we let each region divide again in a similar way. So choosing a new line, choosing a place along it, and drawing out perpendicular or at any angle as you approach the edge of the page. And in each new region, you can begin to just place the pen or pencil and let it divide one side or both sides of that new line at a perpendicular or any chosen angle, slowly creating density in one area through just that repetition of treating each line like a new canvas and subdividing the space around it. And this can grow out organically or become very rigid and structured. As I do these, I tend to avoid starting in the same place so that each one begins kind of fresh and new again as a potential way of thinking about that division. But that would be the basic technique. So you start there and keep going. I think I'm going to move to a larger page and begin to connect that way of dividing space to some of the movement of my body and really use that as a way in. So I'm going to begin with just a some kind of horizon, again, straight or diagonal to the page, whatever works with the way you're sitting. Taking a good breath in and kind of centering the body, and then just really paying attention to a long first division on that page. It might take several breaths, or really riding with one long, slow release. Feeling the way the hand moves in that long trajectory. Establishing that first subdivision there to the space on our page. And breathing in, and if your division is somewhat in the horizontal direction, finding a location and extending a line up, away, with the breath out, feeling that extension out from the body of the arm, keeping it engaged with the paper, and when it either reaches too far or comes to the end, letting it disengage, breathing in, repositioning, and finding that next place on the first line to divide and draw down towards yourself. Again, feeling the difference in the position of the hand, letting the line take its time as it reaches towards the edge of the boundary of the paper. And now we have a bit of a top and a bottom, or an out and an in. We can pick one area to work in for a while. I'll work in extension. And again, choose a place along the line, extending up, and begin to work out to the right or left, whichever feels good. I will give some cues based on my directions, but really moving side to side and moving out and in can be any direction you choose. Taking a breath, establishing a second place on that line, and working to the other side. Beginning to bring the attention to how the hand maybe resting or hovering above the page with these marks. Coming to one of those lines, choosing a place and drawing out. For perhaps a good sustainable technique, trying to keep that hand off the paper while you draw. But if it's comfortable just to let it glide, then enter into that feeling of it moving along the texture of the paper. It just might make some smudges, and it's okay. And I'm going to start working more in this tighter area, side to side, a little over and under and out and an in. Keeping that attention to the motion this might create with the body, especially if you're in extension, and to just start to reach up through the arm into the shoulder blades and the back. You can use the breath to come into that space and support it for a little while. Or if it's creating a discomfort, moving back inward through the territory. As the subdivisions grow, each line presents that opportunity to just begin to travel through the space with a side to side and out to an in. Eventually, perhaps losing track a bit of where things began and which order they happened in, and just knowing each location can begin from a line and extend outwards. working until there may be no more space to continue making the marks of division. Letting the change in density be a way to communicate with the fingertips at a different scale, being in close and small, engaging finer control of those fingertips, but perhaps also moving a little bit quicker. And then that quickness in the small areas, remembering to maintain some connection to our breath. It doesn't have to be an in and an out with each line, but noticing when the body breathes in and when it breathes out, and is there opportunity to connect those two, to perhaps give pause or moments between the action and the repose. And when the areas get very, very small and the pen or pencil doesn't fit as well, or the eyes begin to blur and cross in, you can always jump to a new area, breathing, positioning, and extending side, and then counterbalancing to the other side, extending up and balancing down. And if you're working in this more rectilinear and orthogonal pattern, it brings a bit of structure and continuity to the page. I find my eyes kind of search the space to maintain misalignments, to avoid overlaps, and let each new region kind of establish its own condition and unique inhabitation of that space, to create a lot of wiggle at the edges. And as the density grows, you have more opportunity or freedom to move around, using the breath as a guide within that. It may reposition the body, reposition the shoulders, the arm, and the hands, and allow for that engagement with a new location. If things begin to feel tight or constrained, you can pick up and begin again, continuing through the simple technique of dividing and redividing with a soft edge between. And depending on the size of your paper, if that space becomes too small to work in, you've always got that whole other territory on the other side of the line to jump into at any point for perhaps a change of pace or an exploration. Begin to challenge what our hand and eyes have learned in the first part of the exercise, to look for opportunities of inspiration, or to continue letting the technique be the guide as a way to come to some relaxation in our breathing, some attention and awareness to our hands, engaging with the tool and the paper, some release of thinking the drawing, and an absorption into just drawing the lines. The high variability and potential difference, as well as similarity to each new region. Just a unique expression of that moment. The confluence of our rhythm, of our breath, that extension of this tool, whatever may be traveling through the senses of our hand into our body, the positioning of our spine, all inputs to that potential choice of where to draw that next line. Listening to them without listening, or without letting them override and creep in to our attention, just letting them go. As I find my hand working its way back towards that median divider, it may take the second large territory to just begin to shift attention and move from the grid or the organization of the right angle and allow some arbitrary angles to reach out, perhaps a kind of branching feeling, something that changes the position constantly of my arm to draw in many directions. Something that engages and works against and with perhaps techniques we're used to using in a drawing, pushing the pen from time to time, drawing against the grain a bit of the paper, that not quite random, but arbitrary directionality from a fixed point of view, providing new sensations and opportunities just to have a deeper awareness of our connection with that tool, of the body's position here to the page, and of a deployment of a technique that can run outside of our conscious guidance, just in the background there through our action. And again, the density begins to grow. Any initial preconceptions or struggles with where the pattern may be headed begin to be absorbed by the complexity. We can begin to let them go and let the play and the interface with this algorithm release some of our energies, release some of our control, and just play a bit with these lines. Picking up and starting again in each potential new region. And letting this extension of boundaries and borders perhaps be a place for meditation, a little inward reflection on how these borders divide and connect space, how their alignments can work in harmony or become rigid, and perhaps looking for possible interfaces here that will soften up some of that dividing and breaking of the system. Once it's in place, we can use some time to just continue to draw with the algorithm or look for areas to draw around it, through it, over it, subvert it, maybe wander through it. Pick up and track along edges, maybe cross diagonally to bridge around areas. To use the defined points as places to align, to start, or to link up, to guide, and then just move freely through the territories, keeping the pencil flowing, the ink continuous as an exploration or walk through these regions. Internally beginning to witness what images might come to mind as we think about this path meandering through along edges, across boundaries, flowing, and occasionally finding an end and beginning again. Modulating the speed to what we perceive from our hands and our eyes. How quickly are they tracking together? Are they getting lost? Or are they wandering rapidly through these areas? And whatever that sensation is, just letting it be the guide to take this walk, some short, some long, some really winding through and getting lost for me in all the side streets and neighborhoods, back alleys, occasionally emerging onto avenues and jumping to new places, wandering again, exploring the local conditions and character, and then traveling somewhere new at a new pace, retracing steps from time to time, remembering and seeing again or seeing new from a different direction, that some of these rigid or orderly or contrived structures that help give us some degree of organization are engageable at many intensities, scales, speeds, with new paths through old and new places, worn with time and reconfigured as we change in each new inhabitation. And if the paths get overly worn, we can begin to look for new ones, changing the structure that guides us. Maybe softening the way we divide space, using old tools to ask questions and new perspectives to see what we find. And for the next 3 or 4 minutes, just having some fun drawing here, whether you keep walking through the territories or want to continue working in the space to define new densities, new tracks, or just start imagining within some of the spaces what might begin to happen there. Just letting this small map of a world draw you in as you draw out from it. And with a few intentional deep breaths together, to come back out of the world on the paper, to bring some pause to the journey, to calm that technique that's driving the hand, perhaps bring it to rest through a little stretch and extension of the fingers, a soft closing of the hands, a pulse just to bring the blood flow back to normal. A big breath in, realignment of the spine, and a breath out to come back into our space. And hopefully go out and explore a little bit through our day, wander some new paths, fresh or old paths, with a different eye. Thank you for journeying along with me in this exploration of how we bring space some shape, bring diversity and complexity to that shape as we wander in and out, side to side, forming and reforming our maps, and give ourselves some space to wander through that territory, to question it, to reflect on how it serves us, to look at what we found there before and what it might become in our next journey. I hope through these practices, you can find your own ways through creativity and expression, through the mindful inhabitation of this act of drawing, through attention to our actions and our presence, and through the letting go of things we might want to control in the drawing act, and following a flow, establishing our core techniques, and trusting that we'll make the right decision. Let's take a few breaths, center ourselves, and relax as we draw together. If you enjoy these practices, feel free to try them every day, evolve them, share with me what you come up with as ways of entering into this mindful space through drawing. Give it a like below and share it with some friends. Try it yourself as you talk, even alone in a room, through the act of drawing to let surface what comes through the opening up of this space on a page. I hope everyone has a wonderful week, and as always, draw well. Thank you. I hope everyone out there has a great day and has a chance to disconnect and wander for a bit. This is Rooks is Fun, signing off.